With Shadow of the Erdtree finally on the horizon, the second hollowing has officially come to an end, and with our passions reignited, let's dive into the most anticipated changes that might come with the DLC. Pretty much a necessary step in implementing a DLC expansion, but it would be greatly appreciated if From contributed a variety of quality of life changes to this patch, such as buffing certain spells and tweaking certain weapons. New Game Plus has always been somewhat of a hit or miss aspect with Souls games, with Elden Ring sadly being in the latter. Beside difficulty, there's no real reason we should enter New Game Plus. Thus, my suggestion would be to add certain quality of life changes to the New Game Plus experience. First and foremost, we need to see a reenactment of Scholar of the First Sin edition from Dark Souls 2, where enemies were scattered and replaced all over the place over the course of multiple New Game Plus runs. This way, each run through the game will feel slightly different and entice players to do multiple playthroughs. A second quality of life change which would be heavily appreciated is if we eventually got infinite farming materials, perhaps as a reward for completing a certain amount of playthroughs. This way, the high level meta scene will forever be changed, as we will have an easier time pursuing unique builds such as Sleep, Pot, String Grease, or Scarlet Rot. With Elden Ring, From Software has put a heavy emphasis on convenience, by being able to allocate flasks, level up, change time, spells, physics, all from the comfort of the Grace. Torrent himself is also a big testament to this fact. So why not add another feature that will allow you to rematch Remembrance bosses as many times as you want? It doesn't have to reward the player or anything either. Could be a balanced feature where we just get some runes or something for our trouble. My suggestion is that we can sacrifice remembrances to the Two Fingers, and in exchange we are able to rematch that particular boss. This way, we can continue to entice players to play in New Game Plus, while also demanding some sort of investment from the player. Elden Ring did excellently with its new Ash of War weapon art system, a grand upgrade from that of Dark Souls 3. That said, there are certain weapons in this game that cannot be altered in this manner, and however much it irks me, I ultimately understand the balancing purposes of this feature. That said, we ought to make more exceptions to this rule. I totally understand that we can't just add nonsensical ashes to legendary armaments, but just look at some of these silly sailors. They're practically rowing in the Atlantic Ocean. Obviously, don't remove ash blocks cross classes, but certain weapons would really benefit from having access to this innovative system, as they're otherwise pretty weak in comparison. So what I would like to see is that From either add some more special ashes, as it seems they intended to with some of these weapons, or if they just removed some more of these ash blocks. Ideally one that works just like the one in Sekiro, where we fight a plethora of bosses with limited resources, all while the bosses themselves are granted special moves to challenge the players. There are so many bosses in Elden Ring that has cut content movesets. Putting them back in for this purpose would be an excellent way to re-implement them into these bosses' movesets. It would also be a great excuse to grant players free content split from the DLC, as rewards for completing these gauntlets, which will entice players to buy the DLC if they haven't already. I suggest making it content that is technically already in the game, like the Crucible Stomp, Omen Flip, Albernoric Cartwheel, and most importantly, Flight of Skeletor! I mean, there are just so many talismans in the game that are practically useless. Like the old Lord Talisman, Crucible Feather, Crucible Knot, or basically any of the immunity talismans. Elden Ring might be a vast game, but it needs to have vast purpose as well. The occasional catch talisman is fine, but when we find new talismans, please, let them be more immediately useful than adding the slightest of margins. And I am not just talking about the new NPCs specific to whatever shitshow awaits us within the Land of Shadow. I mean more NPCs that are just there to breathe life into the world like Bach, Toth, or Kenneth Hythe. You know, NPCs with practically no purpose besides the endearment of their company. This sort of aesthetic was so lacking toward the endgame of Elden Ring. So if we get a couple new additions outside the DLC as well, it would be greatly appreciated. And no, these silly ghosts don't count. I mean, let's be honest here. There are just some things in the game that just suck. Like the Dual Axe moveset, Regal Ancestor Spirit, Frigid Rune Bears, and flails in general. Like, there aren't many aspects that need to be reworked, but that just makes it much more necessary. Because then the experience feels just so much more smooth. Obviously, but I'm not just talking about whatever orgasmic DLC boss fights awaits us, no. See, what I need are some replacements for a handful of bosses in the game, including, but not limited to, Royal Knight Loretta, Stars of Darkness, Godfrey, Golden Godfrey, Moog the Omen, and last but not least, these lanky janky motherfuckers of the Godskin duo. Spirit Color Cave did you fucks way better, so let's hope and pray these fuckers are eradicated come June 21st. Please, please, oh FromSoft, please Miyazaki, please that. As a console player, I've been absolutely dying to get my hands on the Seamless Cooperation mod. You PC players have it so good, I swear to God. And this isn't to shit talk From Software, but we all know multiplayer, particularly the cooperation system, is where From has continuously fumbled. In this day and age where we're putting hundreds of players up against each other, there is no reason we cannot have seamless cooperation in Elden Ring. Because as things stand now, nobody is really playing these games together. What usually ends up happening is that we coerce a friend to play the game after we've beaten the game ourselves, only for us to steamroll the entire game for them just to appease our own egos. And as fun as this is, it really isn't healthy for the gameplay loop. Having to sit out and wait for summoning signs should be a thing of the past. At the very least, From has already guaranteed that we'll have seamless cooperation within the DLC, which is an absolute blessing. I just hope they bring it into the main game as well.